I've been an architect since the 1980s, beginning of the 1980s. I'm not a green activist, but at the beginning of the years 2000, I started to become more aware of the environment. It's probably like everyone. Maybe I was just 6 months ahead of the majority of people. Oh, these are not my slides. I don't recognize them. Codes? Well, my experience in a nutshell. I work with a few freelance architects. I work for private clients. I mainly make houses, and it's interesting to see how I've been able to have clients who are asking for passive houses. I need a few houses a year to make my business, so I have 4, 5, or 6 like this one. I got familiar with passive houses in 2004, 2003, 2004. I proposed a few passive projects to clients who were not ready at that time. It was for small flat buildings, but the clients were afraid of having these buildings, passive buildings built, until 2006, where I found a plot of land to build my own house. And it was very good because I needed a house first. And it was at the end of the year 2006 that I found the plot of land. And in 2007, in Brussels region, there were bonuses, premiums for passive buildings, federal aid for passive buildings. And by chance, there was also a reduction of VAT on part of the work, so minus 6%. It was 6% for new buildings. And then there was call of projects for exemplary buildings that are participated in. And I was lucky enough to be a winner. So it allowed me to build my own house, and I experimented the passive method, and it means that I started my experience with my own building, with my own house. I was less afraid of that because it was for me. If I made mistakes, it wouldn't be too bad because it was for myself. So for me and my spouse, for that small house that we had built in Uccle, in the Brussels region. And thanks to the visits organized by PMP and the Brussels region and Bois et Habitat, there's an association promoting wooden houses. All these made it possible to give some visibility to the house. And people were quite curious, you know, in the neighborhood, etc. And this was not my aim to make personal advertising, but it became well known quite quickly. And this is why I had the opportunity to propose to clients to make passive houses, or to welcome people who wanted to have the same house or almost the same house built. So then the second request was a very old client who is a small-scale developer who's buying buildings in Brussels and then reselling them. I had to struggle each time because he was not sure that what he would invest would pay off at the end. But he was quite open to changes, and he accepted to do something on the roof of an existing building. It's a former cinema theater that was transformed into housing. Then we made a passive unit on the top of the building, on the roof of the building. The person was not a very green person. He didn't have that profile, but he accepted the project, and I think he's now very happy. Then later on, people contacted me, and what is interesting is that the clients do not have a specific profile. There are people from different horizons, well-educated people very often, but not necessarily highly skilled people. It's people who have common sense. For example, we have a couple. She's a teacher. She teaches history. Her husband is a musician. They have a very small budget, and they are ready to have a passive building because, well, it costs more, but they are ready to do things themselves or to postpone some of the work in order to, or they're ready to reduce the design level of the kitchen in order to have a passive frame. This is not the common point because some people have very classical demands, but with that couple, for example, so a teacher and a musician, or another case is a former prison director. He's very much interested in folks dancing, and he said he wanted to have a house built for his children that would be a sustainable house. So he's totally convinced, fully convinced. He is ready to stay in a half-ready house to be able to have a sustainable house for his children later on. Then I have a client who is a businesswoman. She knows a lot about passive houses, probably before me, because she promoted a passive building in 2007. She asked me to build her own house. So that's a different contact because that's a person who has very high requirements. And that's, again, a house for one family. And you have to take account of different criteria, environmental, but other criteria as well. Then there's another person. It is a contractor who has a plot of land in France, in Dordogne, and he wanted me to build a passive house in a very wild region. So it's really exciting. And those people have a lot of common sense. They take the plane, for example. They're not green activists. It is quite enriching to have people who are not just extremists. And I don't consider myself as an extremist. I'm not an engineer, so I don't have an unlimited taste for thermal calculations. I work with design offices to make the calculations. And when I built my house, that's in 2007, 2008, when the project was launched, we had design offices able to make the global thermal surveys, but they had too much work and they were not very numerous. So as many architects, I've got used to the PHPP. I've used it for my own house. But again, I'm an architect first. I don't want to spend my life calculating thermal bridges. And now, a few years down the line, we have a good range of design offices that are able to make full and reliable studies, and that's very important. Which means that as an architect, you don't have to take care of the calculation part, and you can really concentrate on or focus on the building of a passive house.
So in 2 words, we have discovered passive house. It was an accident, thanks to the passive house platform in 2002, the Flemish one. We won the competition and we put a lot of crazy things, green and so on. Nothing was working, of course. It was just in the concept phase. And one of the engineers told me, "Do you know passive house?" I said, "Yeah, no." So we went to Germany, and when we saw that, we had the same reaction as everybody. We touched, and you say, "That's all? Is that easy?" Okay. It was in 2002, and then we start some first project like that. Now we have a small practice of 13 architects. The middle age is 32 years old. All together, we have almost 400 years old. What I put here, this is on our website. This is all the building physics tools that everybody use. So every architect in our practice, we start as Gérard. We were outsourcing all the calculations and so on. After 2-3 years, we decided to integrate it all because it was just easier to deal ourselves, the envelope, as we want. And since 4 or 5 years, we don't do any more compact buildings. Absolutely not compact, absolutely bad orientated. As high design as we can. They all are passive, all the buildings we are doing, even in renovation as this one. And the fact to integrate it back, to in-source, I would say, all those building physics calculation really help us to, it's like a big laxative, I would say, to help us to make it easy or make it cool. And I'm also teaching that at university with Bernard, is to help architects or how to make it easy and not to change completely things. So this is all those buildings, some are done already, are all passive. And one project on two, it was a surprise. It was possible, not all of them, but 50% of them, it was possible to do it for the same price than classical buildings. So when people said passive house is extra cost, they are right. And when some people said passive house, there is no extra cost, it's lower cost, they are right also. The thing is to know what are the situation or the factors to give you an extra cost, and what are the factors where, on the contrary, you have a cheaper cost or classic as normal. And it's very funny to know where you are there in there. So in the meantime, we have done this one. This is the first social passive house building, completely zero energy. Complete zero energy. It's for everything, including the refrigerator, the television, computer, Sega, everything. It's all zero. It's just a normal passive house with a lot of panels. So we are going now more and more to zero energy. In the famous, it was the same story in the same time that Gérard was doing his house. When the region came with those subsidies and so on, it was the perfect moment because we are already doing passive, but we say, okay, why not having those extra subsidies for the clients? So now we have 13 Batex buildings, almost 105,000 meters square. Only 10% are built, the other are all in building permits. And I'm going to just show this. On X, you have the meter square. So the biggest now is 32,000 meters square. Now we have a bigger one. But you see, we were doing about 4,000 or 5,000 meters square buildings, all passive, okay? Now we are going more in that direction. What interesting thing was, this is on our website, we have some nerds at the agency, so we do calculation for crazy things. We calculate what's the amount of coffee we drink per project. And what you see here, this is the most liters of coffee. It means we work like hell. Of course, it's a 32,000 meter square building, so it's an enormous one. What is crazy is this one is almost the same, and this is a very small one. It's only 3,000. This is our first passive house building. It takes us as many liters of coffee than the 32,000 one. It was our first time we did it. Now it's okay, it's more, we are calming the caffeine. It means it becomes more normal now.